Well, thank you, Brother Guy. In Hebrews it says to set aside every weight that so easily beset us. And I didn't have a watch, and I borrowed his, and I'm telling you, this is a burden. This thing is made out of lead. And I don't know that the second hand is even working, so if we stay here till this evening, it's Turkish time. There's so many hands on this, I think I can figure it out. Anyway, I do live in Ephesus, and as Brother Joe said, that I've never been married. And this is what happens if you don't dust your house. So, I don't know where you would be, Joe, without your wife. I joke way too much, but what I'm about to talk about is I am dead serious about. Only recently I came to realize, I thought, David, you're by yourself in a Muslim country for 16-something years. And already I've been asked numerous times, how dangerous is it? It's not as bad as here. It's true. Driving here this morning, I heard people saying, if you're on meth, come to this clinic or that clinic. We don't have that problem. Really. And last year, the recent results just came in. 34 million tourists came to Turkey. 34 million. And only 2 million were beheaded. None. A few people drowned from the beaches. You think the French are the only ones that have a Riviera? Turkey does too. So many people come there. It is one of the most beautiful places on earth. The Garden of Eden was there. Of course, things have changed since then. But it's a beautiful, beautiful place. Bigger than Texas. Don't get mad. But it is bigger than Texas. And the real nut-cracking issue is this. There's only 3,000 Christians. 81 million people that they know of. Probably a few other million from refugees. I live in Ephesus. And this is what happened, or in this place in Acts chapter 19, this is where the riot took place with Paul. We don't try to stir up riots. What we do, and I'm here because God sent me here this morning. I have no doubt about it. Friday I was praying, where am I going to go to try to get people to come? And the phone rang. It was our mutual friend. He said, you remember Joe Worley? I said, yeah. I don't know if I'd recognize him. Of course, I'm sure he wouldn't recognize me. He said, you ought to go see him sometime when you're back. I said, well, I'm about to leave. He said, that's what I'm telling you. You ought to go see him. I had prayed just a little bit earlier, where am I going to go? So I loaded up, drove all morning, real early, no problem. I'm always on the road. And hello. I'm going to tell you some stories that are absolutely out of the book of Acts. But more than anecdotal stories, I want us to look at what really matters that we can bank on, and it's in the Bible. Now, these are my marching orders, and we quote these verses all the time, but I want to show that this was not just a tack on at the end of the book of Matthew. In Matthew chapter 28, the Great Commission, we know about it, we read it, it's quoted, it's plastered on walls, it's in brochures, it's everywhere. In Matthew 28, if you look down to verse 18, and Jesus came up and spoke to them saying, well, let's just go to verse 17. This one's pretty rich too. They're all rich. And when they saw him, they worshiped him, and some were doubtful. I promise you, after what I've shared, even if you didn't believe the Bible, if you came and saw these people that I'm going to mention and explain the things that happened to them and to me in seeing these things, you would not be in that second category here. You would not be one of the doubtful people. And Jesus came up and spoke to them saying, all authority has been given to me in heaven and on earth. What a comment. All these politicians that we argue about, they may have control of this earth, it seems, maybe. That's a big maybe. But he says, on earth and in heaven. That's big. Only God can be like that. Go therefore and make disciples of all the nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I commanded you, and lo, I'm with you always, even to the end of the earth, of the age, or the earth. He's promised that he's going to be with them, and he was with them. Brother Joe, I haven't seen you in all these years. He's been with you. He has been with me. Brother, he's been with you. He's been with you, Mr. Randy. I forgot your last name. He's been with you. He's been with me. How can one man be with all people at one time unless he is? Amazing. Amazing. Since he came to seek and to save those that are lost and to give his life a ransom for many, and this was his agenda, God's plan, his accomplishing it, the Holy Spirit's working, then if we are about that, we probably can expect some things to happen. And they do. But I want to mention that this verse was not just a tack on at the end of Matthew. This was not a book just written to Jewish people. Though we read commentaries and other brochures and pamphlets that this is the book for the Jews and so forth and so on. But this is not really true. This was for you and me. Just a case in point. Matthew, knowing everything he's writing in detail, they've been reading the Torah. They're familiar with it more than we are. And in the genealogy, which we probably read maybe at around Christmas time, it talks about these ladies that are in this royal line of Jesus. Now, you read those begats, probably not, but you look in the Old Testament, there's chapters of them, and we just kind of blow over them. But it's so the son of so-and-so begat so-and-so, the father of so-and-so, the son of so-and-so. No women. But in Jesus' genealogy, they have women. Okay, they just didn't do it like that generally, but Matthew did. But they're not just women. Tamar is in there. That's a bad girl if you ever read that story. She's a Canaanite. They were supposed to be destroyed. Ruth is in there. She was a pretty good girl. I mean, she was real loyal. She's a Moabite. Rahab, bad girl, bad girl. You know it, bad girl. And it doesn't even say Bathsheba, it says the wife of Uriah, and Uriah is a Hittite. Why is that? Matthew, at the get-go, is trying to get us to see that God is concerned about everybody, and we can't throw stones at any of them. Nobody. And if that's not enough, within just a few short steps of that chapter, it talks about the Magi coming to worship Jesus that we read about, the wise men, the kings, and so forth and so on. The Magi, these are astrologers. They're supposed to be stoned in Deuteronomy. And they came to worship the King. So Matthew's already set the stage. We may think that he's already messing up the apple cart for those Jewish folks because they're seeing people that are defiled in the royal line of the son of David that's going to sit on the throne forever. So this great commission that you see at the end of Matthew was not an afterthought. This was just marching orders. And when you look at Matthew, you see him running around, and he bumps into this guy that's a centurion. He's like a general or something. And he's asking, and generals, I mean, those folks were real serious about the military. Many of those guys would not marry for years until they reached a higher status and they could have servants. And this one had a servant that was sick, and he's already figured out from a distance, I'm sure, that this fella Jesus, he's doing stuff like nothing I've ever seen. And he goes, and you know the story, and he talks to him. But he's not even from Israel. He's probably a Syrian, which was a sinner for the Romans. And Jesus says to him, I have not seen faith like him, because he said, Jesus, you don't even have to come. I know what authority is all about. You don't have to come. You can speak and heal him from a distance. And Jesus said, I haven't seen faith like this among my own people. And then you have a Syrophoenician, probably a Greek, where Jesus is having this interaction with her, and she's talking about believing in him, and he gives a comment that these dogs are browsing around the table and such. He said, well, even the dogs eat the crumbs from the master's table. It almost seems like Jesus is saying something wrong to her, as if he doesn't want her to come to faith. But in all of those things, it shows us that Jesus is testing you and me. Not because he doesn't know. He knows. It's for us to see who we really are and bring us closer and teach us. And that's what he did to that girl, that Syrophoenician. Again, she's not a Jew. And even when we come to the cross, which he had told his chosen group that was close to him, the closest to him, that they would have to bear their cross, and they knew what crosses were. The Romans were crucifying many criminals. They knew what that was all about. And he said that they'd have to bear their cross or hook up to the plow, or whatever phrase he might use. But they knew what that meant. And when he is being crucified, they're nowhere to be found. They're nowhere to be found. And they have to call on Simon from the Cyrene to help him. Does that mean they're off? No more than we are. But it just shows that there are many, many people in the book of Matthew that were not Jews, that were directly connected to this royal line because of their faith, and that this message is for them, it's for you, and it's for me. And if we seek to obey that, I promise you, he will show up. He will show up. I want you to come and see this. It's mind-boggling. Ephesus, bar none, is the greatest ruins in the world. You can go to Italy, you can go to Israel, you go to Jordan, go to Egypt, go wherever you want to go. There's nothing like Ephesus. And there's other places. Over by Laodicea, there's a place called Aphrodisias. Though that's not in the Bible, it does have ancient church ruins. But we go as tourists. And you're probably thinking Holy Land, Israel. Well, it's just because Jews are great at marketing. And Muslims don't know the treasure they're sitting on. And they sure don't know about this. And so, just to give you some appetizers, Tarsus, where Paul's from, Antioch, where people were first called Christians. That's there in Turkey. Job's tomb. Haran, where Abraham was. Noah, where he landed, Mount Ararat, that's in Turkey. Colossae, that's in Turkey. Galatia, that's in Turkey. The 7 churches of Revelation, that's in Turkey. Pontus, Galatia, Cappadocia, that's in Turkey. The early church councils, Nicaea, Chalcedon, Ephesus, Nicaea, that's all in Turkey. So you see, when we run around on private tours, you get a private tour. I speak the language. Joe told me that, he said, can you translate anything? I said, just about. He said, well, if I bring some deacons, he said, they cuss. I said, I can translate. I do have that handled. And the reason I can say that is because I saw so many people because Turkish is very different than English, as opposite as you can possibly get. So I found a taxi stand in Istanbul. They're open 24/7. There's 20 million people there. And I mean, everybody's not going to walk, so taxis it's a good thriving business. And so they're always open, and they have to sit waiting on the phone to ring. And they all speak Turkish, and they tend to be uneducated. So I go there and hang out day and night. I have a captive crowd to practice Turkish. And so you learn everything. So I'm not afraid of deacons. In any case, we go to see these sites. And as we go, we witness. And it's not that we're on a street corner handing out Bibles. That's illegal. We go, we see people in an olive field, a vineyard, a business, a small business, a tea shop, a park, ruins, homes, bed and breakfasts, small villages, small town villages where we tend to go the most. Because people in the city are like any other city in the world. Everybody's just trying to make a buck to pay the rent and take care of their kids. So you can't catch them. But when you go to small towns, let your hair down, they say, we've never seen tourists like you folks. We've always wondered about tourists, but nobody ever could speak Turkish. I was telling Brother Joe just now as we were singing about that vision of the glory of God, which is taken out of Revelation. John is buried in Ephesus, very close to this. A lady was saved within rock throwing distance from here to the parking lot of that tomb. And then her mother was saved, an elderly lady. She was buried as a Muslim, but she is seeing that vision now. Better than we sang about. And so as we go, we're armed for bear. We give out Bibles. And after all these years, I have yet to have one person tell me why Jesus had to die. And I'll explain what that means and how we get there. Just like I showed up here this morning, and here I am. A surprise to Brother Joe and to you and to everybody, I guess. But not to God. As we go, within 5 minutes, they're going to say, you folks, what are y'all doing here? We went to see Ephesus. Do you know about Ephesus and John and Paul that went there? John? No. Paul? Who's that? Well, they were close friends. John was like Jesus' best friend. And Paul was from Turkey as well, from Tarsus. And he ran all over this place. He came here, and there actually was a riot here. Do you know about them? No. Well, do you know about Jesus? They'll say, well, yes. He's a prophet. And then we go, you're right. He is a prophet. He's the only prophet that came from heaven. And he's coming back. And they'll say, all Muslims believe he's coming back. And they'll say, well, yes, he is coming back. But the question is, do you know why he had to die? After thousands in Ephesus, Tarsus, Antioch, Cappadocia, Pontus, Mount Ararat, Constantinople, Istanbul, Nicaea, everywhere, not one person could tell me why Jesus had to die. The place where it started. If nothing else, and you forget everything, you should know this. What you have today may not be there tomorrow. I have proof. We must have Jesus in our hearts and central in our hearts and on the tip of our tongues. Our lives should reflect what's coming out of our mouth. And the world must hear this everywhere. We're going down the road. We're over by Bergama area on our way to Ephesus. Coming here eventually. And I see a truck stop up on the side of the road. Not so many cars. It doesn't matter to me. But I thought, yeah, this is kind of out of the way. Let's stop and see what we can get away with. Besides, everybody probably needs a break. And we're Baptists. We haven't had a snack in 2 hours, so we probably feel like we're fasting. And so we wheeled in there, and we're sitting at the table, and we have these little packets that we put together, New Testaments, Bible, whole Bibles, Jesus films, tracts, music, just whatever we can get, we put in there. And I said, we're going to put this plastic sack on the table, and when our waiter comes back with our hot tea, which is what they drink there, if you want iced tea, you have to bring your ice. But anyway, he comes back, and I said, what's your name? He said, it's Omer. And I said, Omer? I said, we're on our way to Ephesus here. I said, this is on us. Thank you for being so kind. Of course, all we did was he made an order, but they're all hospitable. And I said, we'd like to give you this. And he opens up the plastic sack and looks in there, and he could see Injil, New Testament. And he closes it up, and he looks at me, and he goes, who sent you here? Because normally people don't get upset very much. I mean, they're more rednecks here than over there. And he said, who sent you here? I said, we just stopped for a break. I mean, we're on our way to Ephesus. No, who sent you here? I said, Omer, I said, look, we're not trying to force anything on anybody. Everybody is free as far as we're concerned. You know, it's on us. We got it in Istanbul. We're on our way to Ephesus. It's yours, free. It's a gift to you from us. Who sent you here? I said, why are you so upset? You don't have to take this. What is it that's offended you? He said, no. He said, last night I was watching a TV program. He said, I work 12 hours a day. I went home. I'm tired. I flip on the TV, and they got this program on, and they're talking bad about Christian people. And I thought, man, that's a party line if I ever heard it. He said, 1 billion Christian people? They can't be that crazy. He said, Allah, can you get me that book of theirs? Be careful what you ask for. Because he knows, even when you don't ask. And we showed up by accident. I went out and bought a lottery ticket. Folks, this has happened so many times. I could throw Brother God's watch away and we could be here till this evening. Ask me to come back, please. And I can pick up where I left off. And there is story after story after story after story after story. And it's so providential. When I'm here now, even coming down here, I made sure I had tracks in the car because I don't know who I'm going to meet at a gas pump or somewhere else. And it's not by accident. The next time you're in Walmart, I guess you have Walmarts here. If you have a Walmart here, those folks in Arkansas like you that own that place. The next time you bump into somebody with your buggy, don't file insurance claims. It was meant for something. Yes. And if you think Omer's story is something, here's another classic. This has happened a little bit earlier. Omer was more recent. It's a bunch of Texas guys, country folks. I mean, they are cowpokes up the road here. And we're on our way to Antioch. And we go through the Tarsus Mountains and stop at a truck stop. And it's all these truckers hauling, because right now, with all the snow and stuff in the mountains in Europe, they can't grow anything. So the Mediterranean coastline of Turkey is semi-tropical, so they feed all those people tomatoes and peppers and cucumbers and bananas and stuff like that. So it's truck after truck coming through those Tarsus Mountains. We're high in the Tarsus Mountains. We stop at this truck stop, and we run it, and I'm watching the whole place. And I figure out who's the owner. He's counting money. And so I have a gift of discernment. And so go there and talk to him. He said, my name's Selatin. I said, Selatin, I said, we're heading on down here to Antioch. We're going to see some of these early churches. I said, I don't know what you think about Christians or Jesus or anything, but I want you to explain to you a thing or two. And by the way, do you know why he had to die? Of course, he didn't know. I explained everything to him, and he said, I'm a Muslim, but I have never been in a mosque. Never. He said, but I know everything about it. I've been brought up with it. But what you tell me makes a whole lot of sense. And he said, I'm going to read this. Can you come back another time? I said, yeah, on the flip side, we'll come back through here. And so we talked with him, left everything with him. I said, there's all these truckers here. I said, they're going to Germany and Holland and France and Russia and Ukraine and Romania. I said, they're probably going to want something to read. I said, we got some good news. Could we give this to all these people here? I don't want to affect your business. Oh, no. He said, they may get mad at you. They may not want it. No problem. Nicho problema. And we go and give all those truckers Bibles, and they all headed out. Nobody was saved. First time they ever heard the gospel, they went to parts unknown. We went on to Antioch, and on the way back, we're trying to find this truck stop. We get so lost, I didn't know where we were. We weren't even on the map. And, I mean, we're in goat trails. And we're getting high up in the Tarsus Mountains, and finally we come to this other little hole-in-the-wall place. It was a trout farm. And so I go in, and of course we haven't eaten in a few hours. Really, this time we feel like we're fasting. And there's trout swimming around in these very cold water streams. This beautiful place. I go in, and everybody's looking hungover or mad at the world or something, which is very unusual for Middle Easterners, particularly for Turks. I go back and talk to the Texas boys, and I said, boys, I don't know. I said, if you fry a fish long enough, I guess it won't kill you. And we're going to order some trout and try to get a conversation going. But I said, what we're going to do, we're going to put a whole Bible on this table. It says, Kutsal Kitab. Kutsal means holy. Kitab means book. Holy book. It's not written on the Quran like that. And everybody knows, though they don't know it maybe in Turkish, when they see that, they know that that is not a Quran and that that's the Torah. Though they would never dream of it being in Turkish. That's only been available since around 2002 or 3. This is how pioneer this is. So we put it there on the table, and this guy comes out from here to halfway in the sanctuary here, and he comes running. And I mean running from out the door. I haven't seen this guy. And he runs to the table, and he slaps the table, and he goes, I want to be a Christian, in Turkish, of course. I want to be a Christian. I want to be a Christian now. And I'm telling these Texas boys, they're like y'all, they're like me. It's just I'm trying to translate for everybody, and I'm shocked because I know that we're lost. We don't know where we are. And I know the secret police can't be setting us up because they couldn't have got there by now. And I mean, there's no cameras. And I'm thinking, and the Texas guys are, amen, brother, let's pray. I said, what's your name? He said, it's Hussein. I said, Hussein? I said, what is it you want to do? It was a blank, Brother Joe. Just as blank as this wood. Blank. I said, now, Hussein, to be a Christian means this. And I explained of our repentance, how that God as holy can accept us as sinful, and how that He's justified Himself and us as well, that it turns His wrath away from us. I explained all that. I said, Hussein, what is it you want to do? He said, he got nose to nose, and he said, Jesus is here with us, but you can't see Him. I'm like, I got ears to hear on that one. And Hussein prayed every word as if he were a Xerox machine copying it. He spit it out, everything, exactly as I said it. By this time, the other folks that were hung over or whatever was going on with them had come out and they're watching. And folks, it is light and it's dark. He sees, they don't. It was so plain. And he is so saved, none of us could stand it. And he ended up, and I said, how did you get like this? He said, I'm a nomad. I said, you're way up here in the Tarsus Mountains. He said, it's getting cold, you see. He said, we're shutting this rig down here, and I'm going to take all of our sheep and goats down toward the Mediterranean on the south side of the Tarsus Mountains. I said, we've been down there. We just came from down there. He said, there's grass down there in the winter. He said, we move them down there in the winter, and we bring them back up here, in the fall, or in the spring and summer. And then now we take them back down. I said, okay. I said, so how long have you been wanting to be a Christian? He said, for 7 years I went to Germany and worked, okay? And he said, I watched the Germans. He said, there are big buildings everywhere. It's kind of like here. But nobody ever goes to church. He said, and he points at his boss. He said, it's like them. They never go to the mosque. They all live like the devil. He's pointing at him. And he said, but below the apartment where all of us men lived, down below us, there was a group. I watched them. They loved their kids. And how they would sing. And I said, and he said, they had the truth. He said, they were Christians. And they had the truth, and I know it. I said, well, you were there 7 years. Why didn't you go talk to them? He said, I don't speak German. I said, you were there 7 years? He said, we worked every day. Sometimes on Sunday, we'd have off because it's a Christian country. And I said, for 7 years. I said, what did you do? He said, we worked at the airport. We cleaned toilets and waxed floors. He said, we worked hours and hours, and we'd all come back there, all of us men, and crash and sleep. Excuse me. And then we'd send money back to our family here because we live in the mountains. There's nothing here, goats and sheep. It's kind of like some people coming from Mexico here that may work for cash and they send it back to their families. But it's something similar to that. But it's mainly Turks in Holland and Germany. Millions. I said, so you did that for 7 years? So you've been wanting to be a Christian for 7 years? And he said, well, I've been here 7 years. I said, wait a minute. You were there 7 and you've been back here 7? For 14 years? You've been wanting to become a Christian? Yeah. Brother Joe, I thought I was lost. It happened just like that. I can take you to him. He is still saved. It's true. God in Jesus came to seek and to save those that are lost, and he is working when you're not. It's his work. You can get on board or watch. It's just that way. We sang about healing 2 or 3 different songs this morning, Brother Guy. Thank you for that. Jesus said we could do greater things than he did. We tend to, as Baptists, I'm very Southern Baptist, but still, as human beings, we can be so reserved with our faith and so sterile about it. Sometimes faith in life is messy. And here we are over by Antioch again. And it's a group of Texas ladies, housewives, retired school teachers. And they spent their time there, and we were about to leave. Went by to visit with a family that we'd witnessed to just to say goodbye. They did not become believers. But we had a wonderful time loving on them and trying to explain the truth of the gospel. And there's a lady there, Maral, and her husband's name, Mehmet. And we're leaving from that shop to go to the airport. And about the time we're about to pull up and leave, finishing our tea and coffee, this fuzzy-headed girl come in, and she was doing the fro thing. And she come in and she got her a breakfast of champions, a Red Bull and a pack of cigarettes. And her name is Emel. And so we talked to Emel, and you can see she's kind of frantic. Maybe she hadn't had a smoke yet. So she's kind of frantic. And I could see she's about to head out. And I said, Emel, we've got to tell you something really good. And I mean, it was the gospel in 5 seconds. And I gave her a packet. I said, this is the best news I could possibly share with you. Please take it with you. It's yours forever. She's gone. 5 years passed. 5 years. I'm back with another group, and I go to that same shop to talk to Maral and Mehmet. I said, you remember that fuzzy-headed girl? Yes, Emel. She called 2 days earlier. She asked about you. I said, what are they doing? I don't know if she's married or anything. It was all about the gospel. And she said, she wants you to come to their house. I said, so I don't know the situation. So I say, well, give her my phone number. Here's my phone number. Because if I called her, that might look ugly. And so get a phone call. And I said, I'm picking up a group at the airport. I said, if you don't mind, she said, you got to come. I said, if you don't mind, we'll pick up the victuals. I know there's some places they sell chicken and lamb chops and stuff like that. We'll pick it up, but people are going to be tired. I don't want them to go to bed immediately. I want them to get acclimated, and we'll come there, and we'll grill and cook and eat and have a big time, and then I'll put them to bed. Good. So we go. Brother Joe, any of y'all, this place is a barn, their house. You might feel uncomfortable about barns. But there ain't a barn. I'm speaking plain English here in Texas. I think I can do that. There ain't no barn in this country of Texas that has a view like their barn. In our hands below us is all the lights of Antioch, Brother Joe. It's just twinkly stars. 500,000 people. They're up high on this hill. They live in a raw cement building that they built themselves. And we brought the chicken and stuff, and I'm walking in, and I see the table, and they're in the middle of this raw cement little platform. We come up the steps. It's just like this, coming up the steps. The people are all behind me like ducks. And in the middle of the platform is this chair, and the guy's sitting there. And he's pretty well built, sort of, sitting there. And he starts to move, and his face gets as red as a beet. And I said, no, don't move. And I said, what's your name? He said, it's Ufuk. I said, Ufuk? I said, you must be Amel's husband. And yes. And I said, well, I'm David. And then this is what he said. Can Jesus heal? No need to gossip anymore. Can Jesus heal? I said, Ufuk? I said, we pray for a lot of people. I guess you probably figured out we're Christians. And he said, I've watched that Jesus film until it's so scratched up we can't even watch it anymore. At night, my wife reads the Bible to me. Not every night, but many nights. We've gone through it. I don't understand much of it. But Jesus healed people. He's got to heal me. I got 4 kids. Nobody even wants to visit me because all I want to do is beg money to take care of my family. He said, I've been crippled at a construction accident for 6 years. My vertebrae are crushed. I didn't introduce anybody else because there's only one person that really matters in this deal. And so we surround Ufuk in the middle of that barn. And we surround him. And just like in Isaiah, Brother Joe, where it says that he will answer before you call, we surrounded him. And we got our hands on him. And we're starting to pray. We do not get the prayer out of our mouth. Do you have the gift of interpretation? As Baptists, our eyes were like this. That's how much faith we had. It happened just like that. It happened. He's still healed, and he can work most of us under the table today. Mind-boggling. It ain't over. God ain't dead. His wife, Emil, fuzzy, cigarettes and Red Bull, she comes, Davud Abi, means Brother David, Brother David. Please pray for me because my heart hurts every now and then. That's those cigarettes for you. We sit her down in the chair, and those country girls from Texas, just like y'all, school teachers, grannies, whatever, 55, 60 years old, something like that. We surround her, and we pray for her. Ufuk ain't having no more praying. He has that chicken. He's at the grill. You can pray. You can do whatever you want to do. It's about business now. I'm not sitting around. Really, it happened just like that. I take those Texas girls to the airport in Antioch, and then I go to Tarsus to pick up a bunch from Oklahoma. On the way, Emil calls me. Because you can't live on the Mount of Transfiguration all your life this side of heaven. And so we got about the business of witnessing. And then last day, of course, we said, kissed and hugged and shook hands and said goodbye and all that and cried and whatever you do. And then I picked up the Okies. I take them back there. Same song and dance. Emil calls me. She didn't know I was picking them up. I said, I got this. Chicken, lamb chops, peppers, tomatoes. She said, is God's Spirit the wind? She asked me that. Is God's Spirit? I said, well, sort of, kinda. I said, there's a place in the Bible that talks about God's Spirit coming from one place going to another. You see the effects, but you don't see the wind, but you see the effects. I said, we'll come and we'll talk more about this, and we'll cook and keep these people up for an hour or two longer. Good. We come in late because we're coming from Tarsus, which is an hour and a half further away. And we show up with these Okies, and here they're all piling in, and we're sitting, and they've already started getting stuff together. Ufuk's taken off from work, and he's there, of course. And so we're all gathered around the table. I said, what is this thing you're asking me about, this wind and spirit thing? And she said, well, I said, you have those Bibles still? Yeah. So she goes and she brings out this Bible, and I flip over to John chapter 3. And I said, here's about Nicodemus. I said, what do you think of this? Read that right there. So she reads John 3. She just starts boo-hooing. Ufuk is at the grill. Yeah, he's not messing around no more. And so I go over she runs over to the grill, and she goes, Ufuk, honey, look, I put no words in her mouth. She doesn't even have any background. She said, Ufuk, honey, I've been born again. I said, and I'm telling the Okies, and I can't figure this out. I said, why are you asking that? She said, because when you folks were praying for me after Ufuk was healed, she said, the wind just blew all over me. And she said, I opened my eyes, and she said, I noticed you had your eyes open. I said, you're right. It's a Muslim country. I'm not closing them. Anyway, she said the wind was blowing all over me. I said, really? So I flip over to Acts, and I show her the book of Acts. And she reads where that rushing mighty wind blew on them. And she said, oh, yeah. She said, yeah, that happened to me. Just like that. Folks, if you were doing the picking, you would not pick Ufuk and Amel. If y'all come over and I take you to Antioch, you wouldn't pick them. They are as humble as you can get. And I'm talking about poor. They have nothing. But you're going to like this. High up in the mountains, there's a crack through those mountains that God made. And that crack opens up into a canyon and goes through many draws and valleys. You know where that road goes? It goes to Damascus. From Turkey, which Antioch used to be Syria, but since the 1920s it's been in Turkey's possession. That was the road that went from Damascus, through the draw, through the canyon, through the pass, through the mountains, to Antioch. Who's coming out of Syria nowadays? Y'all got any ideas? Refugees. There's 5 million in Turkey. They all didn't come down that pass, but there's been 1 million or 2 come through there. They came through Fuchs' backyard. We could not give him enough literature. He's witnessed everybody. The last group that came that wasn't scared, they were retired cops from California. They came, we went there. And we went to the gas station where Ufuk is working. If you were to drive in there to get gas, I don't care where you're from, and you start to get gas, he'll say something to the effect, are you Shiite, Sunni, or Alevi? Those are the 3 Muslim sect groups. Shiite, Sunni, and Alevi. That's another story. We'll go there another day. Those are the 3 main Muslim groups. Now, unlike here where you have separation of church and state, Muslims don't have that. Islam and the state are wed. It's politics and religious leaders, they're close, they're tight, they're together, they work hand in hand, they use each other. So if you ask that question to somebody, they're going to get antsy real fast because they're thinking, if I say I'm Shiite and he's Sunni, I wonder if he's loaded. He might be packing. So they don't want to get in an argument, so they say, well, why are you asking? And what are you? And he said, well, I was just thinking about God and eternity. We watched this. This was what God made him do, and he's doing it now. And he said, I was just thinking about Allah, and I was thinking about eternity and where you're going to go. Well, that throws them a curve because they live for the here and now. And they're not thinking about there. They're wanting to control here. And they say, what are you? Well, he said, well, I believe in Jesus. And since you're Sunni or Shiite or Alevi, I guess you do too. And they all do. Maybe in a different way than us, but they all do. And then he goes, just like this. You believe Jesus is coming back to save the world, don't you? And they'll say, well, yes, he's coming back. He's going to bring justice and he's going to save the world. And then he says, Jesus has already come to save the world. When he comes back the second time, he's coming to judge the world. My question to you is, do you want to accept him now as your Savior, or are you going to wait on him to come back to judge you? We're watching this. I'm telling these cops. And people would drive off, and he'd come over, and he's just as happy as a lark. And those cops said, Ufuk. He said, don't you know over that mountain behind your house and over there, that's Syria. What if somebody came over here and cut your head off? He said, I'm dead. He said, you're cops from California, aren't you? They said, yes. I've watched your movies. I should pray for you. It's exactly what he said. And he said, you're retired, aren't you? He said, I know what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. What are you going to do with yours? That was the way it went. That's the truth of the matter. If we want to get down to the baseline, we have to ask the question, what are we living for? What are we living for? If life is defined outside of Jesus Christ, we're just like existing. What's that? Cushy this, cushy that, status this, clout that. That's a nothing. We can't even prop our tombstones up long enough to remember who's out there. These stories are not rare. Does it have anything to do with me? You can see I am as country as hay. And I have seen this. 2 quick points. In Antioch, we have 3 other people that were healed. And I'm not trying to be sensational. One lady was healed she was on her deathbed and got up off of it. For 21 days, she was in a coma. She got up off of it. Another lady was dying of cancer, could not talk, of throat cancer. She was instantaneously healed. Their family has about 150 people in it. They are all believers. The one lady that got up off her deathbed is within hollering distance of Seleucia, where Paul and Barnabas set sail. If Paul and Barnabas had not gotten that boat, you wouldn't be sitting here. And now we have to go back. And this lady's name is Nuria, it means Gloria. Her porch has become a distribution point for Bibles. They didn't even have the whole Bible when Paul and Barnabas set out from there. And now we're coming to try to saturate the area. I just say all of that to say this. All authority has been given to me in heaven and on earth. Our battle is sin, suffering, and the devil. It's not so complicated. We all deal with sin. We all are suffering. And you woke up this morning, and probably before you put your foot on the floor, you had thoughts in your head that you probably didn't want. If you didn't want them, that means they probably came from somewhere else. Welcome to the war. It's every day. And isn't it glorious? Because the one who's standing there, when you walk in here and when you leave, his arms are open wide. It wasn't just for Stephen. It's for me. It's for Ufuk. It's for 80 million people who have no clue. And if we just try in our feeble, sorry way to witness, to testify to this fact of what Jesus has accomplished on the cross for us in his death, burial, and resurrection, for our problems of sin and the devil, He works mightily. Brother Guy, I don't know where you run off to, but if you want your watch, it's up here. And I'll ask your pastor to come and to do what and say whatever he would wish. God bless you. Thank you.
I always tell the heart of a missionary and evangelist, and David has always had that heart for the Lord, and that is apparent, I think, to you this morning. We did not rehearse. This is completely the Lord's hand at work, and so grateful that God has brought David our way this morning. I know our church has had a missionary heart for a long time, and you're always so faithful to give and also to respond, whether it be through what we call off the program or directly as you give. And you always are so gracious, and God may put something in your heart to give toward this ministry. Like I said, this is completely unrehearsed, but I just try to be a vessel used by God and obedient to Him. So when these moments present themselves like we have today, I just say, Lord, okay, you had something else planned. So what are you doing? I said, well, I'm preaching through a series on wisdom. And just sitting there visiting, the more I'm just trying to discern, so what's God doing in this moment? What is He trying to do? And I'm thinking, well, Joe, just step down, Just step down, Joe. Step down. My flesh would rise up. I have some great thing to say to you. And I would rise up and I would put it down, rise. And maybe probably saw the struggle in my own heart, although I tried to be sensitive to the Spirit of God in you. So I want you to sovereign and great way without me ever really thinking about it. You intersected my life. I believe that you do that. And you made clear my need for you and why you had come to die for me. You made all those things so clear in just a few moments. And I pray that the salvation message of the gospel would be so very clear. You came and you died, and then you rose again, and you did it for us, that we might believe, that we might be born again. So Lord, I pray that that message is resonating in the heart of someone here this morning, that they would make that confession. Or maybe there's a missionary here in the making. You're stirring in their heart. Now, there are already young people in our church that sense a call to ministry, and I pray that you would just mold their hearts and shape them and do something remarkable with their lives. And for the rest of us, Lord, as we go out to the places that we work, Lord, help us to go out with a little bit, a greater sense of what our job is about. And that we'll go with